School. Please stand. Tēnā tātou katoa, koutou kua ikapahi mai, tēnā koutou, no mai ki tēnei hui. Well, good morning and a special welcome to Dr. Jane Goodall, who we are honoured to have visit and speak with us this morning. A warm welcome also to the youth environmental leaders from across New Zealand, and to Sophie Handford from Wellington, who organised the Student Climate Action Marches and is in Youth Parliament and works for Enviro Schools. I would also like to welcome Dr. Goodall's special guests from the Jane Goodall Institute and the University. And a special thank you to Dr. Billy Osteen from the University of Canterbury for making this visit possible. We are very honoured. Please, school, join with me in waiata. Please be seated.
Hi, I'm Jax, and this is Rosetta, Head of Sustainability, and we're going to talk through some actions that we've achieved in relation to sustainability in the past few years here at Rangi.
We acknowledge and honour the status of tangata whenua, people of this land, and the value of Indigenous knowledge in enriching and guiding learning for sustainability. The circular image shown here on the right shows the traditional Māori perspective on our interconnectedness with nature. Okay. Manaaki whenua, manaaki tangata, haere whakamua. This whakatauki speaks to the importance of caring for the land, including all living things, caring for people and going forward.
Through our values and day-to-day practices, we instil a commitment to care. As a school, we accept the responsibility to respect and care for oneself, our health and well-being, each other across species, cultures, distances and generations, as well as the environment, both locally and globally. This slide shows an example of care. Each tutor class is sponsoring at least one endangered animal this year.
In 2014, students supported by staff mentors developed a sustainability philosophy to mark the start of our journey and create awareness. We displayed a day's waste outside the entrance of our chapel, the contents of 128 large plastic rubbish bags, over 3 cubic metres in total. We emptied out for all to see. From that day on, we began separating waste.
We supply sustainably produced food and drink, showing strong commitment to the environment, social responsibility and animal welfare. We cook on site and use free-range eggs and have meat-free Mondays. We got rid of the vending machine with highly processed food and drinks and we have changed to be a water-only school.
Water conservation techniques include drought-resistant landscape design and planting. Recently, over 50 Rangi students helped out with the mother of all cleanups, alongside the Avon River, and our science classes are involved in testing water quality in local rivers and streams.
We endeavour to operate with energy efficiency. Our solar panels are visible on the roof of the Gibson Centre. Planning is underway to establish a biodigester on site to use our green organic waste to create renewable energy.
Sustainable travel and less polluting modes of transport are promoted. Rangi established a bus route from Burnham and Rolleston. Walk and wheel and wasteless Wednesdays are part of our healthy habits.
We separate waste at source, and this has enabled us to reduce our waste to landfill by 58%.
We reduce waste, reuse, repair, recycle and compost as much as possible. In this slide you can see students wearing second-hand clothing. Our Year 7 and 8 classes came up with innovative solutions to waste during challenge-based learning, and textile students create wearable arts from waste. Paper bags from art kits were saved and reused for open day, with each featuring a student's artwork.
Our Rangi Reuse Depot diverts large amounts of waste. Thousands of products are reused, and Rangi sends funds raised directly to Cool Earth to protect rainforests.
Rangi's philosophy includes sustainable purchasing, using goods and services of high environmental and ethical standards. We use biodegradable cutlery, plates and bowls, and purchase fair trade and biodegradable or recycled products where available.
Our school grounds bring students closer to the natural world. We have a worm farm, vegetable garden, and are currently setting up a native plant nursery. And this year we have been growing fruit and vegetables on site for the local women's refuge safe houses.
Rangi's buildings are designed in ways that demonstrate sustainable development. In new buildings constructed since the earthquakes, environmentally friendly design includes maximising natural lighting, thermal mass, water-based paint, replaceable carpet tiles, and sensors for efficient lighting, cooling and heating.
We value social inclusion to enable members of the school community to participate fully in school life, while instilling a long-lasting respect for human rights, freedoms, cultures and creative expression. We encourage an interactive process of becoming aware of and practicing healthy habits, including showing aroha and generosity of spirit by giving time and service. These habits nurture people and nature.
Our wellbeing initiatives are based on forming connections, gratitude, growth mindset, and feeling good by doing good. Rangi weaves wellbeing, service and sustainability into the culture of our school. This was acknowledged in the NZI Sustainable Business Network Awards last year, when we were finalists in the Hardwired for Social Good category. In this slide you can see students promoting our recent food collection for Harvest Festival to support the city mission.
Local connections help us create sustainable partnerships within our wider community. We are part of the Enviro Schools network, and in the weekend students are supporting a long-term regeneration project to re-establish native fauna and flora, including native Ruru, owl and weta into Drayton Reserve. We are also involved in local student volunteer army initiatives.
We practice global citizenship with activities and partnerships that improve the lives of people living in other parts of the world. We're excited to have joined the Roots and Shoots program, Project Rhino, and been involved in the Pictures of Happiness project and Antipodeans Abroad. We are a fair trade school, and during the past few years, service trips and sustainability initiatives have supported communities in Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu and Fiji. All sustainability fundraising goes directly to Cool Earth to enable communities to continue to live in rainforests. Rangi has been a carbon neutral school since 2017. We collect extensive data and offset remaining emissions through Cool Earth and tree planting. As a school, to date, we have protected an area of rainforest slightly larger than our school grounds. We have been awarded and planted over 500 native trees locally.
And this year, one of our goals is to extend our service and volunteering opportunities and expectations across all year levels through participation in community projects. Our school goal is to establish a glasshouse on site for curriculum learning and to serve our wider community through growing vegetables. And goal number 3 involves seeking funding to install a biodigester on site. This will allow Rangi to convert green waste into biogas to replace non-renewable natural gas currently used for cooking and heating. This investment enables sustainable economic savings, of which 60% will be reinvested into sustainability projects.
At Rangi, we are committed to developing deep thinkers who have the capacity to understand and respond wisely to challenges of creating socially and ecologically sustainable societies. In doing this, we allow Earth's natural resources and systems to be maintained indefinitely without irreversible damage. We need people across all disciplines who are literate in sustainability principles, who can think critically and laterally, work cooperatively, form connections, and who are prepared to participate and make a difference. Here at Rangi, we walk the talk and are focused on actions and creating healthy habits to help people, animals, and the Earth's ecosystems to flourish. We are looking forward to hearing from Dame Jane Goodall and how we can all be involved in positive change through the Roots and Shoots program. Thank you.
Dame Jane Goodall, we are absolutely delighted and privileged to have you here to talk to us about your Roots and Shoots program. You are the true example of a manuahine, a strong woman and an inspiration not only to my generation, but to my parents' and my grandparents' generation as well. You are a treasure and we feel so lucky to have you here at Rangi today. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Jane Goodall.
Well, good morning, everybody. And I have to say it's wonderful to come and start the day with music, because we need more music in our lives, and there's so many schools where there's no music anymore, and that's really sad. I've spent so many years in Africa, and their music and singing and dancing is so much part of their culture. So I was very happy to hear the music this morning. People often ask me, do chimpanzees have music? Well, they do drumming deep in the forest. They drum on the buttresses of trees, and it's very rhythmic. They do rhythmic dances around the base of this majestic waterfall, where the water roaring down and creating wind as it drops through a channel that it's worn over the earth. And they do one call. They only do it at night. It goes from nest to nest across the valley. It's the closest they come to singing, I think. And I can't do it very well, but it's somehow like, and it's very beautiful. It goes from one side and then it's answered on the other. You don't hear it very often. Anyhow, you all know that I've spent all these years in the African rainforest learning about chimpanzees, and probably many of you know that now. I've left that forest behind, and I'm traveling about 300 days a year, talking to groups of young people like you, but also talking, you know, up at the top to political leaders and CEOs. And of course there's a reason for that. If all schools were like yours, I wouldn't need to go around so many schools. I don't really need to be here today, because you're already doing all the kind of things that young people should be doing. And you understand about the importance of sustainability and being respectful of animals and people and the environment. But anyway, here I am. So first of all, how did I get to be me? It's very interesting, because I was born in England 85 years ago. Can you imagine? When I was growing up, there was no TV, there were no cell phones. all we had was the wireless, we called it. You call it a radio now. And it was very exciting to be able to listen to a voice that wasn't attached to an electric socket. That's how amazing it was. Anyway, I was born loving animals, and I had an amazing mother who supported that love of animals. And I think the most interesting story, again, some of you may know it, but it happened when I was 4.5. We lived in London, not many animals in London, but Mum took me for a holiday onto a farm in the country. And I can remember so well, it was so exciting, seeing cows and pigs and sheep out in the fields the way animals should be, not confined in these terrible, intensive factory farms of modern animal agriculture. And I was given a job to help collect the hens' eggs. The hens pecked around in the farmyard, but there were about 6 hen houses where they slept at night. I don't know how tall they were, maybe 7 foot, not very big, and all around the edge were the nest boxes. So the hen would go into the hen house, into the nest box, and I would go around and lift the lid, and if there was an egg, put it in my little basket. Apparently, I began asking everybody, I don't remember, but I began asking everybody, but where's the hole? Where's the hole where the egg comes out? Because I couldn't see a hole like that. And nobody satisfied my curiosity. And so what I do remember is seeing a hen. She was brown, and she was going into one of these hen houses. And I must have thought, she's going to lay an egg. So I crawled after her. Well, that was much the wrong thing to do. With squawks of fear, she flew out. I could still feel her wings brushing past my face and hear her squawks. So again, you know, I must have thought, well, no hen will lay an egg here, because this is obviously something frightening in this hen house. But now I'm on the path of discovery. So I go into an empty hen house, and I wait. And I wait. And I wait. Well, fine for me, but my poor mother had no idea where I was. It was getting towards evening. I was gone for 4 whole hours. And any of you who know a little 4-year-old, that's quite amazing. And I remember so well the hen coming in. She had her back to me. She scuffled around in the straw a bit, and then rose a little on her legs, and out plopped an egg. And I don't know who was more excited, me or the hen. So I'm rushing towards the house, full of excitement. And there's Mum, having called the police. Imagine how worried she was. She might well have grabbed me and said, "How dare you go off without telling us? Don't you dare do that again," which would have killed all the excitement. But she saw my shining eyes and sat down to listen to the wonderful story of how a hen lays an egg. And the reason I tell that story is a lot of you here who will become mothers. And what's so important about that story is it was the making of a little scientist. Curiosity, asking questions, not getting the right answer, deciding to find out for yourself, making a mistake, not giving up, and learning patience. It was all there in that 4-year-old little girl, and a different mother might have crushed that. How dare you go off? But she supported me. She supported my love of animals. She got books for me about animals, thinking I'd learn to read more quickly. Well, probably did. I was 8 years old when I found about Dr. Dolittle. I'm sure you've got Dr. Dolittle books in the library here, so if you haven't read them, read the story of Dr. Dolittle. And then when I was 10 years old, I found another little book. And it was rather special because, as I've said, there was no TV back then. We learned from books and talking to older people. And I think during the war, because World War II was raging by this time, I don't think books were printed, certainly not for children. And so our books came from the library, but I found this little second-hand bookshop, and I spent hours in it. And on this occasion was a little book, and I had just saved up enough of my pennies to be able to buy it. It was called Tarzan of the Apes. So I fell passionately in love with this glorious lord of the jungle. And what did Tarzan do? he went and married the wrong Jane. So that was when my dream began. I would grow up, go to Africa, live with wild animals and write books about them. Everybody laughed at me. How will you get to Africa? You don't have any money. Africa's far away. And anyway, you're just a girl. Back then, I'm going back all those years now, girls didn't have any aspiration to become a scientist. And so no wonder people said, Jane, dream about something you can achieve. But not my mother. What she said to me, Jane, if you really want this, you're going to have to work awfully hard. You'll have to take advantage of every opportunity, but don't give up. So that's the message that I've taken to young people around the world, particularly in disadvantaged communities. And so many people have come up to me and said, Jane, I really want to thank you because you've taught me that because you did it, I can do it too. So I was so lucky to grow up like that with very little money. And I was lucky to grow up in the war years, not that the war was anything but terrible, but you learned in the war to value everything. You didn't take one mouthful of food for granted. Everything was rationed and we had coupons. And it's very different today for a lot of young people, like all of you. You kind of take things for granted because why shouldn't you? You've always had it. At any rate, I was good at school, but I never liked it. I wanted to be outside in nature. And I left school. I didn't go to university because we couldn't afford it. Did a boring old secretarial course. Got a letter from a school friend inviting me to Kenya. Saved up money working as a waitress, and which is very hard work, by the way. And then I got out to Kenya, and I met Dr. Louis Leakey, famous paleontologist. And I think he was impressed by how much I knew about animals, even though I'd only just come from the UK. And it led to him giving me the opportunity of going to live not just with any animal, but the one most like us, the chimpanzee. And we know today that they are our closest living relatives. We share 98.6% of the composition of DNA with the chimpanzees. And there's so many similarities in things like the composition of the blood and the immune system, the anatomy of the brain. We didn't know quite that much back then when I began in 1960. And at first the chimpanzees ran away from me. They'd never seen anything like me before, and they're very conservative. So I began to get worried. There was only money for 6 months, and weeks turned into months. And although I was learning by watching at a distance through my binoculars, I knew from all the time I'd spent with the animals around my home growing up, to really find out what I wanted to find out, I needed to get them to trust me, not to run away. Anyhow, one chimpanzee, I named him David Greybeard. He had a beautiful white beard, and he began to lose his fear. And it was David I saw on that magical day when I was going through the forest, a bit depressed. It had been raining and I was cold. And then I suddenly saw this black shape sitting on a termite mound. And through my binoculars, I could see him reach out, pick a grass stem, push it down into a hole in the termite mound, carefully pull it out, and pick off the termites that were hanging on with their jaws. And he did that for a while, and he picked a leafy twig. And before he could use that as a tool, he had to strip the leaves. And it wouldn't be exciting if you saw something like that today, but it was back then, because science had decided in its great wisdom that humans and only humans could use and make tools. And it was that observation that enabled Leakey to go to the National Geographic Society, and they agreed to continue funding my research when the first 6 months' money ran out. And they also sent a photographer and filmmaker, Hugo van Lauwijk, to record what I was observing. And I was observing more and more, because gradually the other chimps, and I think David Greybeard helped, because he wouldn't run. And if he was in a group that was ready to flee, they kind of looked from him to me, and I suppose they began to think, well, she can't be so dangerous after all. And so gradually, it was almost as though he was introducing me to his friends in the forest. Of course, he wasn't, but, you know, I got to know his best friend was Goliath, who I discovered was the top-ranking alpha male. Then all the other different male personalities, each one different from every other, just as we are. And there was Mike, and there was Mr. McGregor, and there was Mr. Wurzel, and there was Humphrey and Hugh and Charlie and all the rest. And then there was the old female Flo, and I got to know her first because she was so distinctive. She had this bulbous nose and ragged ears. And she was the top-ranking female. And then, of course, there were all the other females. What I loved, was watching how the different males got to be top. And for some males, it's very important to be high in the dominance hierarchy. And some of them are just very aggressive and frighten the others. They don't last very long, maybe 1 or 2 years. Others are more intelligent, and they only challenge higher ranking individuals if they're allies with them. They form alliances. And they're not so aggressive. They rely more on intimidation tactics, and they last longer. The longest rule we've known in nearly 60 years was 10 years. One male remained top for 10 years, and that was Mike. Figan also reigned for 10 years. So when it comes to the females, I was fascinated to see that in chimp society there are good mothers and not so good mothers. And the good mothers, the best mothers, are very affectionate, they're playful, they're protective, but they're not overprotective. They allow the child to explore and learn for itself. And most important of all, they are supportive, just like my mother. So if you're a very low-ranking female and your child goes off to play with the offspring of a higher-ranking female, if those two young ones get into a squabble and your child screams, you're going to run in and support that child, even though almost certainly you will be attacked by that child's more dominant mother. So now we've looked back over the years and we find that the offspring of the good mothers tend to do better. The males usually reach a higher rank, they're more self-confident, and if you reach a high rank, you're likely to sire more offspring. And the female offspring of the supportive mothers tend to be better mothers themselves. And so all these things were really important. But I was also fascinated by the fact that the chimps have a long childhood. They suckle for 5 years, sleep in the mother's nest at night for 5 years, and ride on her back, although less frequently, for 5 years. So the bonds between mother and child get strong. And then the next baby is born. The older child continues to travel with mum and little brother or sister. So the bonds get stronger between mum and child, but also start developing between the siblings. And I think this long childhood is important for them as for us because they have so much to learn. And they learn by observing, imitating, and practicing. And one definition of human culture is behavior passed from one generation to the next through observation and learning. So we now know, because there are other studies by this time, that in different parts of Africa, chimpanzees have different cultures, different ways of using tools, different ways of using some of the gestures and postures of communication, which, by the way, are almost the same as ours: kissing, embracing, holding hands, patting one another, begging for food, swaggering, shaking the fist, and so on. So it was getting more and more clear how like us they actually are. And it was getting very clear there wasn't a sharp line dividing us from them. But when Leakey made me go to Cambridge to get a degree, he said I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. And he got me a place in Cambridge University to do a PhD in ethology. I didn't even know what that meant. And can you imagine how I felt when the professors told me I'd done everything wrong? I shouldn't have given the chimpanzees names. Giving them numbers was more scientific. I couldn't talk about them having personalities. minds or emotions, happiness, sadness, fear, despair. Those were unique to us. But fortunately, when I was a child, I had a wonderful teacher. And he taught me that in this respect, these professors were wrong. And that was my dog. You can't share your life in a meaningful way with a dog, a cat, a horse, a rabbit, a cow, a bird. I don't care. And not know that, of course, we are not the only beings on the planet with personalities, minds, and above all, emotions. And so I was eventually able, with the help of the chimps, to enable science to come out of this narrow, rigid way of defining us. Went back to Gombe, built up a research station, and I could still be there, out in the rainforest, learning about the interconnection of all living things, the value of every single little species in the amazing, beautiful tapestry of life, each species having a role to play. I left because I learned the extent to which chimpanzees across Africa were vanishing. So as more and more field study sites opened up, there were reports of chimp numbers dropping, forests being cut down, chimpanzee mothers being shot to steal their babies to sell them locally as pets or overseas to be cruelly trained to work in circuses and other forms of entertainment. And back then, in 1986, they were still being used in medical research. And I learned about the growing prevalence of the bushmeat trade. That's the commercial hunting of wild animals for food, very different from subsistence hunting. And I learned about how the human populations growing, moving deeper into the forest, taking with them their cattle, which destroy the forest gradually, but also disease. And chimps are so like us, they can catch our infectious diseases because they haven't built up any resistance to them. So I went to Africa to learn more about it, because I don't think you can talk about something unless you have some first-hand experience. And I learned a lot about the chimps and their plight, but I learned a lot too about the problems facing so many of the African people living in and around chimp habitat, the crippling poverty, the lack of good health and education facilities, very often the degradation of the environment. And it came to a head when I flew over the tiny Gombe National Park, where I began in 1960, and where we are still studying chimpanzees today with a research team. It's the longest study of any group of wild animals in the history of animal behavior studies. So I flew over this tiny national park, which had been part of a forest stretching from east to west across equatorial Africa. And by 1990, I looked down on a tiny island of forest surrounded by completely bare hills, more people there than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere, struggling to survive. And that's when it hit me, if we don't work with the people living in and around the natural habitat of whatever animal we're studying, then we can't even try to save those animals. We must have the support of the local people. And so the Jane Goodall Institute started a program, Take Care, which was very holistic and gradually has improved the lives of the people in ways that they suggest. We don't march in and say, we're going to do this, this, and this. No, ask them and have a team of local people asking them, how can we help you best? And this has worked so well that we have this program through all 104 villages throughout chimpanzee range in Tanzania, and also a similar program in 6 other African countries. And it's working. These villages have become our partners in conservation. Fly over Gombe today, no bare hills anymore. Trees have come back, seeds left in the ground, and sometimes the roots of trees have sprung back. I began traveling further and further around the world to talk about what was going on. And I was learning more and more about the problems that we have inflicted on this planet. And you're already addressing them here. I watched the slides and listen to what you're doing. So you know about what we're doing to the planet. And yes, we're very, very like chimpanzees, but we're also different. And chimpanzees and other animals are way, way more intelligent than we used to think. Ratty has come with me to illustrate that rats are amazingly intelligent, and these guys, giant forest rats, are being taught to sniff out landmines buried under the ground after the civil wars, and they've helped to clear Mozambique of landmines, which have been harming so many people. And Piglet comes because pigs are as intelligent as dogs and more intelligent than some. And after this, when you get back to your classroom, Google Picasso, not Picasso, Picasso. And I won't tell you what you'll see, but you will be amazed. And yes, and cow has come because cows are amazingly intelligent. Cows, like pigs and rats, have feelings, can feel fear and pain. And in New Zealand, you have this big problem with cows, and they're producing methane gas, and also the waste is washing down into the streams, into the rivers, into the ocean. A lot of water used to change vegetable to animal protein. And these cows in these intensive factory farms, they have such a terrible, terrible life. So you talked about meatless Mondays. I gave up eating meat when I learned about the intensive farms, and the next time I looked at a piece of meat on my plate, I thought, this symbolizes fear, pain, and death. And you know, these animals are really intelligent, but think how different our intellect is. We've designed a rocket that went up to Mars, a little robot taking photos. At one time it was thought that maybe Mars might support human-like life. But if you looked at those photographs of the surface of Mars, you don't want to go and live there. We've only got one beautiful blue and green planet, planet Earth. How is it possible the most intellectual creature to ever walk this planet is destroying its only home? Do you think there's a disconnect between this clever brain and the human heart, which is love and compassion? And I think the only way that we will achieve our true human potential is when head and heart work in harmony. So, Roots and Shoots, the program that I'm here to try and spread around the world, it began in 1991 in Tanzania. It began with 12 high school students who were interested in the problems around them as it related to humans and animals and the environment. And we had a meeting with them and their friends, and we decided, okay, we'll form this movement, Roots and Shoots. The main message, every individual matters. Every individual has some role to play in this life, even if we don't yet know what it is. But most importantly, every individual makes some impact every single day. You can't live through a day without making some impact. And you get to choose what sort of impact you make. And at the end of the day, look back and say, did I leave this planet a little bit better? Or perhaps I didn't. So what does this mean? It means thinking about the consequences of the little choices you make each day. What do you buy? How was it made? Did it harm the environment? Did it lead to animal suffering? Is it cheap because of child slave labor? These sorts of questions. And if people gradually further and further afield begin making ethical choices, we're moving towards a better world. And Roots and Shoots that began with these 12 high school students now has members, few in preschool, lots of kindergarten, very strong in university and high school and everything in between. It's in 60 countries and growing, and it's forming a movement of young people who understand that, yes, we need money to live, but it starts going wrong when we live for money, when we get caught up in this materialistic way of living. when we lose our connection with the natural world, which is so important for our spiritual development, if nothing else. And Roots and Shoots is very much about trying to get children out into nature, because only when you care about something, when you understand it, do you even want to help. And only if we help will the world be saved. We're going through dark times right now, and I think you all know that. I think you all know how we're harming this planet. But my reasons for hope are very simple. And my greatest reason for hope is all of you. Because everywhere I go, there are young people with shining eyes wanting to tell me what they've been doing to make this world a better place. Like the two girls who stood up here earlier. Very proud of what you and your friends are accomplishing, and quite right too. So this is happening everywhere, and it's happening in places like China and all over Africa, many parts of Asia, right throughout Europe and North America, and growing in South America and starting in the Middle East. It's growing everywhere. And it's like a family. If you go somewhere and know nobody, and you've joined Roots and Shoots, and you find another Roots and Shoots group, the young people have told me it was like finding my family, and I suddenly felt at home. So, second reason for hope is this extraordinary brain, and we are beginning to use it to find technology that'll help us live in greater harmony, but also in our own lives, how we conduct ourselves as we go along our life's journey. And thirdly, the resilience of nature. And I already mentioned how the trees have come back around Gombe because they've been given a chance as the villagers realize that saving the environment isn't just about saving it for chimpanzees and other wildlife, it's about saving it for their own future. Because we all need the forests, we need the clean air that they provide, we need the clean water, just as we need the ocean for the clean air and clean water that it can provide, both absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and breathing out oxygen. And as we destroy them, this, they call it service, is diminished. And we will get to the point of no return. But as I say, nature is resilient, working to clean up areas, and places that have been totally destroyed can be given another chance. Life can come back. Animals on the brink of extinction can be given another chance. You have amazing examples here in New Zealand. Look up the Black Robin and Don Martin, and that is one of the most wonderful stories. And then my final reason for hope is the indomitable human spirit, the people who tackle problems that seem to be unsolvable, and they won't give up, and so often they succeed. And if they don't succeed, then others will be following in their footsteps because they inspire others, and eventually that goal will be reached. So the last message I have for you is just remember, first of all, that every day you live you make a difference, every single day. Secondly, every single one of us has that indomitable spirit. You may not realize you have an indomitable spirit. Just give it a go, give it a chance. Let it come out, let it inspire others. Tackle something, and if people say to you, oh, that's silly, you can't do that, don't give up. Just like my mother said, just don't give up. And I guess I'm pretty obstinate, and I'm not going to sit back and let all these businessmen and governments trample over Mother Nature. It's your future I care about. So if we get together, we can make that difference. And this is what happens in Tanzania. At the end of a Roots and Shoots meeting, they all, with great enthusiasm, were saying, together we can save the world. And I said, yes, we can, but will we? And so now they're saying, together we can, together we will. So any of you in this space who feel that you want to help save the world, can we do that together? with me. Together we can. Come on. Together we can. Together we will. Let's try once more. Together we can. Together we will. Thank you.